Hello, in this video we look to wrap up our discussion of the making of glucose molecules in photosynthesis by talking about the Calvin cycle. Let's not waste any of your time. Let's get right to it. Alright, now when we're talking the Calvin cycle, we want to emphasize right off the bat that some of those materials from the light dependent reaction, the LDR, arrives and is used in the making of the glucose molecule. So we've mentioned previously that the Calvin cycle, similar to the Krebs cycle, it's a cycle to where enzyme to enzyme does its particular little job as part of the process, but things we want to point out, where the C's are added, where the oxygens are added, where the hydrogens are added. And of course we want to emphasize again that it takes 6 spins around the cycle to get a full glucose molecule. The idea of 1 carbon molecule is added each time around. That idea is called carbon fixation, changing it from the carbon dioxide and adding it to the glucose molecule. Excuse me. But again, let's see what else we. Oh, the ATP from that comes over from the light dependent reaction. It's going to supply the energy to get this process complete. So we had an endergonic reaction back in the LDR when we built something, when we added to the NADP, and now we've got an exergonic reaction because it's going to supply the energy. Part 2, we want to think about the NADPH arrives from the LDR, and there are 2 of them for each cycle because we got to get 12 H's, and so we just need 6 C's and 6 O's, but we got to have 12 H's. So if we're going to bring 1 at a time for each cycle, then we're going to add 2 each cycle. We got to have 2 of them each arrive each time, and then the carbon dioxide arrives. That gives us our C's that we need, and our O's that we need, and our H's that we need. We begin to build that glucose molecule. Excuse me. And again, 6 spins to get all the parts added. So some key steps, as you can see, some things that are important, and when we look at the cycle in the next screen, some things that are going to be happening is that right off the bat, the carbon dioxide is broken apart and the carbon molecule is added to the RUBP and forms a molecule called verbisco. And that's super important because you essentially have the molecule that is the end product of this for the Calvin cycle spin is added or is connected to the carbon, and that gets that whole process started. And of course, it's these enzymes, a series of enzymes that are doing this. But the idea, and of course you can see the enzyme name there. Not super important. They always have long, complex names, but it's just the idea of who's doing it, and that initial first step, which is super, super important. All right. So as promised, here's our Calvin cycle, and now we want to think about where these things happen. At spot number 1, which is a reference to the top, you've got the RUBP, which is that end product of each spin of the Calvin cycle, and it's the top, the entry point is where the carbon is added to make that into Rubisco. The carbon is added, and of course the enzymes doing that. And remember, if we talk about enzymes, the idea of the carbon dioxide would bind to an active site, the RUBP would bind to an active site, and then the carbon would be moved over, and that would convert it into Rubisco. And the CO in Rubisco would be the carbon and the oxygen that are added to the molecule. Part 2, this molecule goes through a series of changes based on enzymes. You can see that we're using some energy, some ATP to get this done. You can see that some NADPHs arrive and drop out those H's. Again, there are 2 of them per spin around, and so that's where the H's are added to. So we are slowly building this glucose molecule. Okay, so we've added the C's and the O's and the H's, and now as we go around the cycle, say like at 7 o'clock, if you know the face of a clock very well, from that point on, now the process is used to regenerate. Okay, what was made is kind of put off to the side. You can see that downward arrow put off to the side, and then we use that remaining from that point on to rebuild the RUBP to get ready for the next cycle. So we make a little bit, and then we put it off to the side. Make a little bit, put it off to the side, and connect it as it moves along. But it's the idea of 6 spins. Each spin, a carbon gets added, an oxygen gets added, and 2 hydrogens get added. Well, that's our video over photosynthesis, and it also brings us to an end to Chapter 8. That's that. If you are a high school student, this will conclude your series of videos. Crowder students, we still have more to go. So for Crowder students, we will be talking the next time. Let's see, our next unit after this is going to be, that's a good question. But anyway, I think haven't made our schedule yet, but I think it'll be the, you know what, I don't want to say. So we'll see you then.